They taught me how to read, but never how to read myself. They taught me grammar, structure, punctuation, and spelling, but not how to spell my own name with pride. I could break down Shakespeare, but I couldn't break down where I fitted in this world. What's the point of reading stories if you never see yourself in one? Welcome to this hidden curriculum series. This episode is called They Taught Me How to Read, but not how to see myself. Imagine getting the keys to all the world's knowledge, and you go through stories of heroes and faraway lands, and only flipping through every single page, every chapter, and never ever really find a reflection of yourself. School, it filled my head. It taught me how to decode words and to get my head around complex equations, to reel off histories of distant kingdoms. But in all of that learning, in all of those books, a huge part of me was still missing. Me. My story. My African descent. And my South Sudanese face. I was an okay student, and school was supposed to be this place of learning. A space where the world was supposed to open up. And we were taught to read, to absorb, to memorize. And the official curriculum? It was straightforward. It was maths, science, literature, history. But along all of that, there was always this invisible teacher in the room. The hidden curriculum. And let me tell you this unseen force was pretty much dictated a lot of what we really learned. The unspoken rules. The values that get celebrated, and most importantly, whose stories are considered important enough to be shared. I learned about the kings and the queens in the old Europe, about the revolutions that changed continents or far away, about the poets who wrote about landscape that I had never ever dreamed of. And the lessons were packed, the knowledge felt vast, and yet this education was supposed to be so enlightening. It ended up casting a shadow. It taught me tons about other people thoroughly, but it taught me next to nothing about the people who looked like me, who came from where my family came from. And the silence about my own heritage was defeating. That was a lesson that was taught not with the words, but with its glaring absence. And the hidden curriculum was hard at work, shaping not just how I saw the world, but how I saw my place in it. It all started off with a whisper, a tiny sense of disconnect. I'd look through pictures in storybooks and the famous historical figures in our textbooks, and the main characters were all the same. In every adventure, they were brave, they were brilliant, and they were pioneers. But they were never ever African descent nor South Sudanese. The school library, it was a place I once thought was a gold mine, but it started to feel like one of those funhouse mirror holes, reflecting everybody but me. It offered countless of stories, but none of that echoed the tales whispered in my home, the rhythm of my culture, the unique, the beautiful tapestry of my South Sudanese identity. And this wasn't just about characters in books. It was about history lessons that just skipped over huge parts of African continent. It felt like the world was being presented to us, suggesting my people, my heritage, were just a footnote. Maybe not even that. This absence, it sent a really powerful, unspoken message that my story, and with it, my identity, wasn't enough to be part of the big story of knowledge. And that's the sneaky power of the hidden curriculum. It can make you question your own worth and your own reality when you're constantly shown that the world celebrated in classroom doesn't really include you. The knowledge that I was gaining felt hollow. This borrowed coat that didn't fit because they just didn't acknowledge or affirm the person that I was. I was learning to read the world alright, but I couldn't see myself anywhere in any of the pages, in any of the chapters. And this realization wasn't some sudden lightning bolt, but more so a slow, daunting arch of invisibility. Feeling more and more lost in this sea of universal knowledge that somehow missed me, I started a quiet search. If the classrooms and the textbooks weren't going to show me my reflection, I figured that I had to find my own mirror. This wasn't some research project. It was a pull from somewhere deep inside, a real hunger to connect with parts of myself that school had just glossed over. It began with stories, my mother's voice, weaving tales of our homeland, of our traditions, and of our incredible resilience. And these weren't in any library books that I had found. But they had a richness, a depth, and that resonated in a way that Shakespeare never could. Not because Shakespeare isn't brilliant, but because my mother's stories spoke my language and my history. And I started seeking out to my immediate family members and elders in the community and listening so carefully as they share their experiences, their wisdom, and their ways of looking at life. And every conversation was like finding a new page, a new chapter in a book that I never felt existed. The book of my own people. Listening and exploring South Sudanese music, letting the rhythm and the melodies tell stories that the words sometimes couldn't quite capture. I learned about the symbolism in our traditional clothes, the meaning behind our dances, and the powerful community bonds that held our people together through generations of joy and hardship. It was a totally different kind of education, one that wasn't graded nor tested, but was so much more personal and affirming. Because sometimes even just sharing a traditional meal with my siblings and my family took on a new meaning. And these weren't just customs. They were threads connecting me to a huge, vibrant heritage. A heritage that was alive and breathing. Not just some relic of the past. The school environment, with its often one-size-fits-all expectations, and sometimes felt like it was trying to sand down our unique edges, maybe trying to push a kind of superficial sameness. But the real equality isn't about everyone being the same. It's about everyone having equal value and equal recognition. And my journey was about reclaiming those unique edges, understanding that they weren't flaws, but the vital parts of who I was. It was a slow process, like putting together a mosaic, each new discovery a piece and a precious tile that helped me reveal a bigger and more beautiful picture of my identity. There wasn't one single lightning bolt moment, but there was this really powerful and crystallizing experience. It happened in the community cultural celebrations, and for years that I had seen events like these, and sometimes joining in and sometimes just watching. But this time, something inside of me was different. I had been on this quiet journey of searching, and now I was seeing everything with new lenses and new eyes. And so I chose to wear traditional South Sudanese attire, not just as a custom, but as a statement. And it felt different this time. The vibrant colors and the intricate patterns. It was more than just fabric. It was a declaration. As I joined the dancing and surrounded by the sounds of our music and the smell of our familiar food and the sight of all of our faces just reflecting our heritage. This was an incredible sense of belonging just washed over me. It was just a missing piece of my soul that finally really clicked into place. And in this space, no one or nobody needed to explain who we were. Our identity wasn't something to be debated or justified. It was just lived, and it was breathed. It was celebrated. And seeing the pride in everyone's eyes of the elders and the young youth, the pure joy in the children freely expressing their culture. It was such a powerful antidote to all of those years of feeling invisible in the mainstream education. And this was the mirror that I had been searching for. It wasn't a textbook picture of some king or scientist from a distant land. It was right here. It was in the living, in the breathing and the expression of my own people, my own culture. It was realizing that my identity wasn't something that I had to find in the footnote of someone else's history, but rather a vibrant and cultural story. All of us owns it. And that day, I didn't just see myself. I felt myself deeply and truly as a proud South Sudanese individual in the mainstream. That day at the cultural celebration wasn't an ending, but rather a really powerful new beginning. And finding that authentic reflection started to mend this disconnect that I haven't felt for so long. It was like finally getting the right pair of glasses after years of seeing the world all blurry. And suddenly things made more sense. My heritage wasn't some separate boxed off part of my life, but rather it was an essential thread in every fabric of who I was. This new clarity started to change how I moved through the world. That feeling of being invisible in academic spaces didn't just disappear overnight, but rather it didn't define me anymore. I carried my mirror inside me now. I began to understand that the absence of my story in mainstream education wasn't a reflection of my worth, but rather a reflection of the system's own limitation. And my self-esteem, which had been slowly chipped away by that constant lack of representation, started to get stronger and stronger. And I became more confident in sharing my perspective, in beginning and bringing my cultural background into conversations where it felt relevant. And the stories of my mother told and the traditions that I was learning, they weren't just personal treasures anymore. They were valuable insights, different ways of seeing and understanding the world that could enrich any discussion. Embracing my cultural heritage didn't just mean rejecting the knowledge that I had gained in school. It meant putting into context and adding my own narrative to the broader human story. It was about understanding that true knowledge isn't just about absorbing facts. It was about connecting the dots. This journey of finding my reflection has truly been transformative. If my story connects with you, or if you are on a similar path of discovery, join us on this podcast for more reflection, videos and audios and storytelling narratives. And I'd love to actually hear from you in terms of what you may have actually taken away from today's conversation. And here's a question and a thought for you. Have you ever felt like your story was missing from the mainstream? I hope you actually find your mirror, your voice, and truly treasure that your story counts. You matter. So feel free to share your experiences in the below comment. Today I walk with different understanding of myself and the world. That feeling of being lost, even with a head full of knowledge, has been replaced by a real sense of being rooted. Embracing my South Sudanese identity isn't just about rejecting other cultures or ideas, but it's about knowing where I came from, understanding the journey of my people, and carrying that heritage with pride and purpose. It's the foundation that I built everything on. This doesn't mean the challenges of representation just vanished. That hidden curriculum, it still exists in many places. But now, I'm better equipped to navigate it, to challenge it, and to voice out. And also to help those who feel invisible. I understand that my story, and stories like mine, really do matter. They are essential to a complete and honest understanding of our shared world. The education system taught me to read stories of others, and I'm grateful for that. But the deepest lessons that came when I started to seek out and understand my own was finding my true reflection in my cultural heritage that gave me a sense of belonging that no textbook by itself could ever do. It taught me that my identity isn't something to be watered down or assimilated, but rather it's something to be celebrated and shared. It's a source of strength, resilience, and a unique way of seeing things. And the goal now isn't just to find our place in the world, but to actively shape it, to make sure that more diverse stories are told, heard, and truly valued. We all learn how to read words on a page, but we're not always taught how to see ourselves. For too long, many of us have memorized other people's stories, while our own narratives just gathered dust. But here's the thing. You weren't born to just read books. You were born to write one, to seek your mirrors, and to find your voice in the mainstream world, and tell your story. Thanks for watching and listening. This is your space, your tribe, your legacy. Let's grow together, and until next time, stay rooted and stay rising.